So sometimes I think it's good to look over old paintings to work out how to make the next one better. So today I'm going to look at the process of making this painting and have a little critical analysis of it. And I'll let you know what I think at the end.
It's the nail Conan painting.
So one thing I love about making these videos is being able to reassess old paintings, a kind of post-mortem of what I did. And I really think that doing this is an important way of improving as a painter, or improving at anything. To look at what you did, to reassess it with a bit of distance, it allows me to be more critical about what I was doing, but also work out how to do things better in the future. It's maybe a bit like when golfers film their swing and then look at it again later. It's easier to see what you need to change when you look at it from this like third person viewpoint. Maybe something like that. So this painting is from about a year ago. It's not that old, but I have enough distance now that I feel like I can look at it. So here's me starting out. I didn't record making the sketch, but as you can see I did it just with paint, with a thin brush and some paint. One thing that was really important in this painting was getting that perspective of the hand. If that's wrong, nothing else is going to work. You got to get that feeling of the hand sitting on the bed and it feeling right against the size of the head. It sounds like a simple, obvious thing, and in a way it is, but it's these things you have to get right. So that's really what the sketch was mostly about, just trying to get them roughly the right size. I'm just using transparent Oxide Red and some Ultramarine Blue to kind of map out some of the darks, and then go in again with some of the pinky tones and more opaque paint to get some of the shapes of the body and the face. But if I'm being critical of what I'm doing here, I think that I'm not getting into these shapes enough. I'm leaving them quite ill-defined, really. Like, maybe I could be more... I could commit more at this stage. Or would that be an overcommitment? It's hard to tell, but I think here things are left a bit too blurry. I'm not saying the things should be tighter, like closer to a kind of reality or something, but I think I could commit to some shapes to then reassess them later. I think there's maybe a lack of commitment at this early stage. Debatable. So there's a bit of a skip there, you can see. I'm not sure why I didn't record that, I just couldn't find the footage. So here I'm going in with juicier, opaque paint, and I've put a little bit of something into the background as well, a bit of green. And this is starting to come together quite nicely, I think. You know, the portrait is starting to be a little bit more fleshed out. There's some nice tones. I remember thinking at the time how I wasn't really used to painting in a high key, like the kind of brighter end, but actually it's not that bright. So here I'm doing something which I often do, which is get a liner brush and just refine the drawing, you know, particularly in the features like the edge of the nose, the eyes, the edges of the mouth. I'm not going to redraw everything and define everything, but it just gives me some anchors to fall back on. And I'm also here putting some variation to the background. I thought it was maybe a bit dark, but I wanted some of that dark to come through, so I've just put in a slightly more yellowy, brighter green. Potentially it's a bit sludgy, but I was hoping that the nice fresh pink would be a nice balance to that. And you can see I'm trying to think about edges too, so that liner brush work around some of the features creates some hard edges, whereas where the hair falls away into the background is a much looser edge, but I want it to be made of a soft edge made of many hard edges. So I've used scraping it back and adding on to try and get there. See, I'm just trying to put in some more of the highlights. This is just filmed on my phone, and not even a good phone, an old phone. And so it's not able to capture some of the nuances in the way some of my other videos do. So apologies for that, but that's the nature of this post-mortem. I'm looking into the past. So I'm thinking here about the shapes of that hoodie. I think I'm making some mistakes. You see, the paint I'm putting down here is lost some of that fresh pinky feel. It looks a bit desaturated. It looks a bit mucky, actually, a bit too purpley mucky. Maybe it's alright, but looking at it now, I'm not so sure. So I'm also trying to loosen up some of the edges. I really wanted that light on the side of the face to really shine. You know, the idea that it's light coming in from the window there. So you can see the colours are all over the place on this video. That's just because it's a time lapse and the light's changing in from the window. But it makes it very hard for you to see what the colour is and for me to assess properly. At the end of the video, I'll have some footage of this, what it really turned out like with the better camera. So having made that video looking back over the painting process, like the golfer's swing, and having a look at it, there are some things that I think I'm disappointed in. You know, I heard somewhere once that there's 4 things you only need to get right in painting: drawing, colour, value, and edge. So maybe we'll use that little framework to have a look at this. So I think the drawing is okay. I think that the composition, which I'm including in that, is quite good. Maybe there's something funny about it being cropped over the top of the head here, but I quite like the lean, the position of the hand. I think it's kind of interesting, so for me that still works. The value I think's alright. There's maybe some areas that need a bit of work, but I'm not too disappointed in that. The colour's sort of okay. I think it's consistent with the palette I was using at the time. But the thing I think that lets it down is edge. So there was a moment when I was doing the voiceover, when I was talking about this edge and how I was trying to make a soft edge out of many hard edges. But actually it didn't really work out. And the point when I was talking about that in the painting, this point that I'm showing you now, I think it looks much better than it turned out. There's something too hard about it. All these little bits. I don't think it works. What I really wanted to get was this idea of this edge being really soft. Just disappearing off. Every time I tried to do it, it didn't feel right. And I think that's because none of this was soft enough. This needed to be harder, and then everything going much softer into the background. And I thought I could do it in a different way, with lots of these little marks. Really, I should have done a bit more palette knife work, or blending, blurring it in. So that's the major thing for me I think's wrong with this. I'm sure you might be watching and thinking there's loads more wrong than that, Neil. But if we can just learn one lesson per painting, maybe that's enough. So that's the lesson I'm taking from this. Need to work on my edges. Maybe you disagree though, and maybe you like this painting. And if that's true, so it's on the website. By the way, if you're wondering what happened with that competition from last week, yeah, I didn't win.